I'm Carol Stone, and I'm from the state of Virginia. I'm the treasurer of VASTA, which is Virginia's chapter of ASTA. It is so nice to see so many people here today, and I hope everybody's relaxed now from answering those very interesting questions on the pre-test. I'm going to be, I've been administering ASTACAP now for 5 years in Virginia, the in-person exam, and I've been sending my studio also to the exam for that long. And I'm going to be talking a little bit today about, for the examiner, what actually is the in-person exam and why is it important. And I'm sorry this slide was not done on Slide Maker or whatever, but I did it this morning in my hotel room on the back of my room service information. So that's what we do, right? Teachers have to be innovative. So the great thing about ASTACAP is that students, because I've been talking to people, some people have no idea what it is. Students at all levels, whether they're beginner, intermediate, very advanced, whether they're talented and have musical backgrounds, or whether they're just a kid who takes orchestra and likes it, they come to ASTACAP, and ASTACAP supports them and their teacher by requiring that they prepare a program of scales, etudes, and a piece, or pieces depending on the level, and play it all at once for an examiner. So the crux of ASTACAP is really this moment when, and it ranges from 6 minutes to 35 minutes depending on the level. When the student is playing their heart out, they're a little nervous, they're doing great, for the examiner. And so since that's really at the crux of the situation, we have to create an evaluation form that the examiner can use effectively to record a record of that and also communicate back to the student and the student's teacher what the examiner thought. So how many of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy? You remember this from Psych 101? Not very many people. Very quickly, I'd just like to say that in Maslow's hierarchy, which is a social psych concept, it's the idea that people's needs need to be met at different levels. For example, until you have food, you don't care about shelter. Once you have shelter and food, then you might want to get a good night's sleep. And then maybe you want to make some friends. And then maybe you want to participate in your community. Maybe you want to have a profession. And maybe you want to develop mastery in your profession. And maybe you want to become someone who is important and making a contribution. And you're moving up what is called Maslow's hierarchy. So I kind of did Maslow's hierarchy for the evaluation form, which is, and you find students the first year, they're like, did I pass? Did I get honors? And very quickly, I don't care about that anymore. Then they're very interested in what were the impressions and the suggestions made by the examiner. And these are very helpful for the students, the parents, the teachers, and we want examiners, that's why we have this training program, who are very experienced, capable, and good at conveying this information to be helpful to the students. But in the end, and I think this is what Renata was getting at too, what we really want to do is inspire our students to practice, to play, to make progress, to enjoy their instruments. So this is why ASTACAP has been such a successful program, and why we developed and are developing the examination form to handle all these needs. So right now we have 2 levels of examination forms. Just the fill out is fine. So yes, so the examination form now looks very different from the prior ASTACAP examination form. Can everyone hear me? Okay. So there are 2 levels of the form. This is the lower level. And it looks complicated, but it actually works really well. We've been trying it out a lot in mock exams with our students. This is a result of a mock exam with my student, whose name is not on it. I made that name up. So the thing is that the form needs to have multiple levels, because in the same way you can't use a high school report card to grade a second grader on how she's doing in math. You need to have these numerical and descriptive constructs, which we call the rubric. We have 2 levels, foundation through 4 and then 5 through 10. This is the foundation through 4, and that I'm going to show you. And the way it works is you have the skill sets along the side, and this is a little bit out of focus, sorry about that. We have intonation, rhythm, left hand, right hand, tone, expression, memorization, posture, stage presence, and sight reading. And then in each of those you have a numerical scale from 1 to 11, or actually that's 12 on the other form. It's sometimes 1 to 14. Yeah, you have the copy in your packet. Good. And then we have the descriptors underneath. Now, the reason we have the numbers and the descriptors, which are new, we didn't have those before, is because there are 2 reasons. Number 1, it's helpful to have a codification like that because from one examiner to the next, you might have an examiner who thinks everybody should get a trophy. A 6-year-old who plays the viola is cute and should be encouraged with, multiple exclamation points. I've had examiners like that. And then you have examiners who feel like children should be allowed to fall and skin their knees more often. Those people. And there's a lot of both in me. So what we have is we guide the examiners to have a consistent codification so that from state to state, from examiner, they know what we expect in terms of what's a beginning level performance that needs a lot of work to what's an outstanding performance. We chose words that were, honest but not punitive. They get a little more honest in the higher level form. This is the lower level form. And then, since, as I mentioned before, the students play etudes, scales, and pieces, as you're filling out this rubric, which you do very quickly, there's not a lot of time. The exams range, as I said, from 6 minutes to 30. What I did in this case is I color-coded, which I did because it was mock exams. This is something I'm not sure would work at the national level, and there's another way to do it, which I'll show you in a minute, using S, E, and P, but I color-coded it for my students, and they love this, and they loved going over it, and you have the right color in your hand while they're playing their scales, while they're playing their etude, a different color. You can see this student wasn't as well prepared in her etude, and it's kind of clear right away what happened. It's kind of, you could see how she played when she was prepared, you could see how she played when she wasn't prepared, you can make comments in the margins, and in the end, you kind of say, well, it wasn't all the same, but you don't have to do a numerical average, but you think, okay, I'm going to bring this down a little bit because the etude wasn't prepared. And then, for some reason, you can't see it. Oh, because I took the picture and I left it out. So the scores are written down on the side and then tallied up, and the student got a total of 82 points, which is an excellent exam, not an outstanding exam. I'm always very encouraging. I encourage you all to be very encouraging whenever possible because we're also giving a lot of honest feedback. Now this is just the front of the form, which is the numerical part of the scoring, determines whether the student will pass or fail. The back of the form, the upside down part, that's not a mistake. The student's program is going to be written there. When you're filling out the front, you can just discreetly tuck the bottom underneath. And I think this is one of Kelly's students' ideas, or maybe Kelly's idea, I'm not sure. A very good idea. Ample commenting on the back, and this is when you really have a chance to communicate very clearly with the student and the teacher. Whenever I go over these exams with the students, they look at the front, or they look at these, their grading kind of score, just kind of, yeah, this is what they want. And so the grading kind of score, it tells them whether they pass or whether they get honors. And you'll learn how honors is done, and it's written in the handbook. But it's these comments that are really the meat of the communication. And does anyone remember what it was at the top of Maslow's hierarchy? Was inspiration. This is where you really have a chance, your chance as an examiner, to communicate with the student and the teacher and let them know how they're doing, where they need to improve, and inspire them to have hope, keep going, enjoy themselves, love music, and all those things. So let me see how I'm doing on my list. Well, can you, may I see the next slide, please, Kelly? Thank you. Okay, this is the more advanced rubric, and here you can see where I put the scores to the side. You will need to tally scores. In Virginia, we always have an assistant in the room. Maybe you can have your assistant check your tallying or tally your scores for you, because that does take a while. And what you really want to be doing is not worrying about your math, but writing comments. And in this case, I used, rather than colors, here's the scale score, a first piece, a second piece, an etude, and then when you go, so you can write down your impressions, some little comments, and then so that when you go back at the end, you can put your averages here and tally it up. The one other thing you might see is here where it says comments only. If a student and teacher right up until the moment of the exam can choose comments only, this is for students who are afraid of grades, and it's just going to make them miserable to know that they're getting a numerical score. It's also for students who have not achieved, they're partially prepared, so they're not just like wasting everybody's time or theirs or yours, but they haven't prepared their entire program. So in that case, the site administrator will have made it very clear. I just put a big X through the front, so you won't start to fill out the grades. You just turn it over on the back, and you provide them with comments to comment on their playing, and also perhaps give them some ideas on how to be better prepared next time. Okay? So I think I'm going to stop there unless, nope, I've covered everything. Does anyone have any questions? And I think really your questions are supposed to go on the card, so maybe just a couple of questions. Yes, absolutely. I don't know if that will happen today, but because it's a copyrighted form, and we want to make sure that when it becomes publicly available, it's in the format that we want it to become publicly available. Yes, you in the back.
I don't get that, even the foundation one, and I'm also facilitating the exam in May. So when can I get those?
Oh, well, put that on a card, and also this is when you would definitely contact those, talk to Kelly, contact the contacts, contact the mentor committee. We'll definitely get you a form for your exams. We would really like to support you in putting together that exam, making sure you have the forms, and get your questions answered.
Let's have that question again, because I don't think many of us heard that. Can you say that?
Well, I just said that since I'm facilitating the exam in my state, so I would like to have those rubrics.
Absolutely. And I really recommend, too, these mock exams. I want to say, even if you're not at your in-person exam, using the rubric and just as a teaching tool, man, do the kids practice in a different way that week, and it's just a really great way to get down to the meat of the matter. And they love that they're participating in an experiment. Yes?
I just want to say, in Berkeley, we just did our evaluations last weekend, and I used the form, and I loved it.
Great. Great news.
Thank you.
Yes?
Copy on the website?
I don't believe it's there yet, but it will be in the, there's one version of it in the handbook, but it's been updated. There's only a single version in the handbook, and it's been updated and changed, and so, but as Kelly says, this is a fast-moving process. I can take one more question. Yes.
I wanted to ask you about this. The comments only section. So how does that work? Like, if the student just wants comments, does that mean that she automatically doesn't pass? Like,
No, she will not. She will not pass at that level.
Okay.
So yeah, so you put, there's a checkbox, do not pass. Also, just to mention the honors designation, if, again, as an examiner, you don't have to make these decisions, but as the site director, you do. So for a student to get honors, it means, let's say they're playing for level 3. So one way they can get honors is to play a level 4 piece. Or they can play the entire program by memorization, except the etude, which is never required to be memorized. Or they can play a cadenza from a concerto movement, which wouldn't apply to level 3 anyway. And in addition, they have to have an overall score of outstanding. So this is going to be clarified over and over again, because it's a little ambiguous the way it's currently written in the handbook. So if you have any questions about that, again, ask for clarification. And it's in this newsletter that we sent out that a bunch of people haven't seen, but we have to get that out so you guys can have access to that clarification newsletter that gets sent out every now and again. Thank you yes?
On the form, so some of the categories apply to each portion of the exam, the scales, etudes, and pieces.
But then some of the categories are maybe just for the overall performance, like posture and stage presence.
Well, that can vary. For example, some kids, their stage presence is great when they're nailing it, and then they get to the part that wasn't so well prepared, and you can really watch, well, how do they handle that?
So then you have scores.
Again, you can,
like 4 scores for each category.
No. You can have...
That's what you showed on your pictures.
Sorry. Okay, so I think what you're saying is that you're talking about 4 specific piece scores, so there's solo score or etude score.
Oh, so the elements of the exam, yes, if you like, you can score for scales, etude, piece 1, piece 2, but in the end you create one average, which you write in the margin, and that's the final tally score.
So what you showed on the screen is not the way we would want to grade. That's
Can-
exactly.
Can you show the,
Okay, let me
can you show the level 10 one, because
Yeah,
it
so
has
there's
the
2
most.
options. She showed you, so on the back of the form, if you read on the back of the form, there is a description of what you can do if you want to score each individual part of the rubric. But you don't have to. Some judges prefer just to see an overall score and just give an average as it goes along. But if you want to give really specific feedback, then you need to give individual scores.
Is it possible to go back?
Yes, I'll go back.
Maybe the higher level one, because it had the tallies in the margin. Which didn't
Okay, I
show.
see what you're saying.
So here were the individual scores that I think you're talking about. Is that correct? But then there's a kind of a mental averaging. And these are the ones that are added up for the final score. Okay? So I'm going to...
Let's do one more, because he's been raising his hand.
Oh, sorry.
okay.
I was-
Go ahead.
Oh. So my question for ASTICAP is, I only taught in Texas and New York, and they both have established kind of rubric systems like NISMA and like our solo and ensemble. Are you thinking that ASTICAP will be used in conjunction in these events, or is it something that's completely, it's a separate thing?
Right. So
Okay, sorry.
to answer that question, this rubric came from a solo ensemble festival. It can't be used in ASCA that way.
Okay.
Okay, so the skills that you get from this training can be transferred, but the rubric cannot.
Okay. So you wouldn't run the contest as a double thing?
Now, there are some people who are taking, no. There are some people who use ASTICAP as their program that they use.
Yeah.
Okay? There are other people who send their kids to solo ensemble and use ASTICAP separately. Because we have so many kinds of teachers, ASTICAP is really open, but you have to make your decision on what you want to do. ASTICAP is primarily focused towards average students gaining more motivation, gives them a possibility of just comments, which is a plus for some students. If you want competitive and you're just playing a solo ensemble is a great venue for that.
Okay, so you wouldn't okay, never mind.
ASTICAP really looks at the whole performer and not just one performance. That's a really big difference. Okay. Thank you, Carol. Let's give Carol a hand. She's done